Did Donald Trump steal top secret documents? The answer appears to be yes, but should that distract from the fact that Democrats are fighting for you each and every day? The Inflation Reduction Act, Medicare prescription drug costs are capped at $2,000. Let's not forget the wins. And of course, let's talk about what's going on across the country in a lot of these Senate races and these congressional races where Democrats are rising, Republicans are sinking. And let's speak with Allison Gill, the host of Mueller, She Wrote, and the Daily Beans podcast, who could break down and make sense of Donald Trump's nonsensicalness, his criminality, the search warrant executed on Mar-a-Lago. Brett and Jordy, great to be doing this podcast with you on this Monday. How are you both doing?
Big bros. Fired up for democracy and justice, man. Justice seems to be happening. You know, we've been talking about how the wheels of justice move slowly, although I think Ben once accidentally said the scales of justice move slowly, but we understood what he meant. But now it's all happening. It's great to see.
You mean we as brothers mix up phrases from time to time? That's crazy.
Occasionally. Don't you worry about it. But I'm really excited to dig in with Allison, because Allison has been just one of the best sources of information for everything related to really all these investigations. She is always spot on. And I'm about to say something pretty sweet, everybody. And I don't know if y'all know this, but we are doing a live show with Allison Gill. You heard that right. Live show. And it is soon. It is August 22nd at the Largo in Los Angeles. So if you could get to Los Angeles, you will see us live. Well, me and Ben will be there. And we got a great lineup. We got Allison Gill. We got Frangela from The Final Word. We got Steve Pearson from How We Win. And we got Kathy Griffin as the headliner. I mean, that's a really special show. Get your tickets right now at howwewinlive.com. And one of the best parts of it all the money that we raise for this goes straight to helping the most vulnerable races, the races that we need to win, to hold on control of Congress. So you got to get this. You got to see us live. It's going to be a absolute blast. Jordy, how you doing?
I'm so stoked for that. I'm doing well. So the reason I've been saying big bros and let's go, bro. There are people out there that still don't know we're brothers. It amazes me.
Well, Jordan, think about it. We're adding, 5,000 YouTube subscribers a day. A lot of people are just finding out about us. So, for those who are new to the show, it's great to have you all here. Yes, we are three brothers. We're not just three dudes who sort of look alike. And and it's great to have you a part of this pro-democracy movement.
All right, you're just going to make me feel bad about it. Then never mind. I guess whatever. Then welcome. We're happy to have you. Yes, we're three brothers. Guys, I can't wait for today's show. Let's get into it.
So Tennessee Brando, who's one of the Midas Host correspondents who does a great job, he did an incredible video that everyone could take a look at. But basically, he said, I wonder when Jesse Waters and Tucker Carlson and Lindsey what's her name? Laura Ingraham. We'll talk about Lindsey Graham in a bit. Although Tucker Carlson's out, so he has a number of his sycophants on filling in during the search warrant of Mar-a-Lago. And the crazy right-wingers are like, do you think it's a coincidence that Tucker Carlson leaves and the DOJ?
Yes, that's exactly what they did. Charlie Kirk wrote that. Yes, the Department of Justice looks at Tucker Carlson's broadcast schedule and they go, that's when we're going to strike.
But what Tennessee Brando says, it's as if these people put like pieces of paper with every possible excuse in the bucket and just keep picking ones to try to defend, Donald Trump's indefensible action. So they start off and they basically say the FBI planted the information. And then they move to Trump with a magic wand can declassify everything, even though the classification status of the documents is irrelevant. What is relevant is that he took documents that don't belong to him because he's not the president anymore. And he looked at those documents and stored those documents in places they don't belong. And he didn't return those documents. So then it goes to, with a magic wand, he declassified it. So I want to get this right. So Donald Trump declassified documents. Then the FBI took the declassified documents, secretly planted it in Mar-a-Lago. That's what their other excuses. Then they go, we should defund the FBI totally. And then they go, we should completely repeal the law on espionage. That's how much of a joke these radical.
Yeah, at least they're leaning into it now, though, right? Like, at least they're not like hiding it. Like they used to make all these other like ancillary excuses. Then Rand Paul just goes for it and goes, yeah, all the rules that Donald Trump broke. Let's repeal all those laws. How about that?
Yeah, let's repeal the laws. And then you have Fox News saying, well, Richard Nixon said that if a president does it, it can't be illegal. So they invoke Richard Nixon. They make ridiculous. They try to go, Obama took it. Obama has a national library, the Obama Library in Chicago, which is controlled by the National Archives. He doesn't have top secret documents in his home in Chicago. It's a very different thing. And of course, they got to invoke Hillary Clinton, and they go, Hillary Clinton was never investigated. Yes, she was. It was the most intense politicized investigation ever, which cost her the opportunity to be president. And y'all called for her to be locked up. It's the subject of a 550-page Inspector General's report. And here's the thing. They go, well, Donald Trump was the president and she was the Secretary of State. So at least he was the president. Exactly. He was the president. She was the Secretary of State. Hillary Clinton isn't walking around now with top secret documents that don't belong with her at her home in Chappaqua or whatever and saying, here are my documents. I'm not turning over. He's not the president. He doesn't have a right to these documents. So each one of these things is proved to be completely BS. And then Trump I want to talk about this with Allison Gill. And then Trump basically releases statements with Fox now. We need to turn down the temperature. He reaches out through an intermediary like a freaking mobster to Merrick Garland.
A total mob statement, by the way. The second I read it, Fox tries to frame it as, look at good guy Donald Trump. He just wants to turn down the heat on this investigation. He just wants to make sure everybody is calm. But the statement specifically was very much that of a mob threat. And if you can't see that, you do not know Donald Trump and how he speaks. When he says he will do whatever he can for the temperature to be brought down, when he says things like the American people are, quote, not going to stand for another scam, quote, the country is in a very dangerous position. There is tremendous anger like I've never seen before over all of the scams, and this new one, years of scams and witch hunts, and now this. Those are not the words of somebody who wants to turn down the temperature. Those are the words of somebody saying, look, things could get a lot worse if you continue down this path, Department of Justice. This country there might be a lot of problems for you, Department of Justice, if this investigation continues, or let's work together and maybe we could cool things down if you start dropping some charges, if you don't actually charge me. That's how we could cool the temperature down. It's a mobster tactic, and guess what? It's not going to work. Threatening the Department of Justice, threatening the FBI, sicking your goons on the FBI is not going to work. And it's probably the worst legal strategy imaginable.
And that's exactly what they're trying to do. This weekend, you had MAGA extremists with AR-15s standing in front of the FBI building in Arizona, for example. I mean, he really is trying to provoke a Timothy McVeigh style situation with the FBI. And what some people are saying, what Papa Ducey said this morning on Fox News, is he's like, we shouldn't focus on the FBI, but it's cool to basically attack Merrick Garland and the DOJ that way.
Yeah, people were like praising this statement. Can we play it and then we'll talk about it after?
We just know that right now, given the fact that there's a suggestion, there are a lot of online, apparently very specific threats against very specific agents at the FBI and whatnot. It would be great for everybody to tamp down the rhetoric against the FBI, because the FBI simply was doing what the DOJ asked them to do. The Attorney General is the boss of the guy at the FBI, of all the people at the FBI. So, with all of these threats going around, it would ultimately be great if the former president, who has always been a great supporter of law enforcement, has posed with 1,000 police departments coast to coast. It would be great if he called for an end to the violent rhetoric against federal law enforcement, and in particular, the FBI that was just doing their job.
But as Trey Gowdy pointed out last night, for you to look at this situation and think that Democrats and Republicans have been treated the same over the last few years, you'd have to be looking at a different situation.
Yeah.
I mean, they just lie with absolute impunity. To say that Democrats and Republicans have been treated the same in the Hillary Clinton email situation, when relating to the fact when she was actually the Secretary of State, not when she was a private citizen hoarding top secret, special secret compartmented information, was not the case. You didn't have it. You didn't have what you have now, an FBI director who's been quiet. The DOJ has been quiet. They haven't politicized it at all. It was Trump who went, and the MAGA base who leaked all of the false information. We never got a copy of the warrant. There was no lawyer allowed to be on scene. Literally everything in the world that's false. But, there you have Ducey saying, don't threaten the lives of FBI officers because that's not politically helpful to us. Instead, threaten the life of the DOJ, threaten the life of Merrick Garland. That's exactly what they're saying there.
He could have stopped at "Don't threaten the FBI" and then been done. But he was like, this is actually the fault of Merrick Garland. Direct your anger at that man. It's so dangerous, so messed up. And Brian Kilmeade, meanwhile, like sitting next to him, Brian Kilmeade, who's been filling in for Tucker Carlson every single night, who's been one of the chief spreaders of the lies of the Trump clan, we're just sitting there, just stewing in his anger, waiting to speak. And finally, he literally goes, but there's a but to that. But Democrats have been treated so differently. And then he reignites the fire.
There's a
that
but
Ducey was
to
trying
don't
to
threaten. I mean, just think about it. For Republicans, there's a but to don't threaten the lives of FBI officers. And Trump never backed the blue. They use the troops, they use the police as props where they stand in front of them on their press conferences. They say the nice things about him, but when it actually comes to funding the officers or focusing on the officers' health care or the health care of our troops, actually the people behind it and not the billion-dollar industrial complex where they can give their billionaire buddies tax breaks is what they really care about. They throw these officers, they throw these troops under the bus with impunity. That's the first people that go in there. Jordy, what do you think about that?
You're so right. They use them as props, man. They use the military as props. They use our law enforcement as props. Why? So they could sell merch, so they could sell bumper stickers that say back the blue to their base and get donations. It's really one of the saddest things that you could see. And when push comes to shove and the votes come for the PACT Act, the Republicans are nowhere to be found to help our troops. They don't give a shit about our troops unless it's beneficial to them in some way.
This is some breaking news I want to report. Rudy Giuliani just received a letter earlier today, and it's breaking on the wire now, that he is a target of the special grand jury investigation into criminal conduct by Fani Willis. Rudy Giuliani has now officially got a target letter. I want to talk about props in a second, Jordy, and how the state of Pennsylvania is being used as a prop by Dr. Oz. Before I do that, I don't know if I cited or said that Eric Swalwell's tweet was the one at the beginning of the show. I got so excited about reading that tweet because I thought it was so good that I just maybe have moved on. And Eric Swalwell is a friend of the show.
Yeah,
as well,
Swalwell listens to the show. He was probably like, hey, wait a second. I
said that.
Well, we'll really test if Swalwell listens to the show. And I did that purposefully to bury right.
Genius, Ben. Genius. You're always thinking ahead, man.
So, Jordy, this Dr. Oz news that is resurfacing today. Exactly. It was a video that was out apparently in April, and it's Dr. Oz, and he's shopping in a supermarket, but I've never seen someone shop in the vegetable section the way Dr. Oz is shopping. And so Dr. Oz, as he's over there, so he's, I mean, there's one person who quoted it. I don't even know if this man's just not from Pennsylvania. Like, he may not even be a human. Like,
it is like an alien going to a supermarket.
He may be a robot and from outer space. So the first thing is he says he's going to a supermarket called Wegner's. And Jordy's going to explain, first off, there is no Wegner's. Second off, what is
Are you going to let me explain it, or are you going to explain how I'm going to explain the video?
Okay, explain the video.
Should we watch the video first?
Let's watch the video first, and then I'll tell you everything wrong with this video.
Well, play the video for our audio listeners. You can hear it all on audio the same way.
Here we go.
Thought I'd do some grocery shopping. I'm at Wegner's, and my wife wants some vegetables.
Yo, he's got like the thickest New Jersey accent also, right? Doesn't help.
For crudité, right? So here's a broccoli. That's $2. Not a ton of broccoli there. There's some asparagus. That's $4.
And if you pay attention, the math is wrong.
Carrots. That's $4 more. That's $10.
It's $8.
There.
It's $45.
You need some
$57.
guacamole. That's $4 more. And she loves salsa.
And then for the audio listeners, he's taking the salsa and misquoting the price.
The shortage of salsa. Guys, that's $20 for crudité, and this doesn't include the
$20 for crudité.
I mean, it's outrageous. And we got Joe Biden to thank for this.
That's outrageous. We got Joe Biden to thank for this.
Got Joe Biden $20 crudité.
All the working class Pennsylvanians are very concerned about their crudité.
Yeah,
I've never
Joe
even
Biden
heard the
25
word crudité until this video. I mean, absolutely absurd. Can I just go through everything that's wrong with the video?
Break down the other things that are great about the video.
Please. So for those listening, and if you're a new listener, I live in Pennsylvania. I've lived here now for 3.5 years. I've visited on and off the last 10 years with my fiance who grew up here. So I spend a lot of time with her family, about 200 plus years of experience.
Fact check, Jordy, you are now married. She's no longer your fiance.
Good fact check. Good fact check. I gotta get used to saying that. My wife.
There was a whole. We were out in Pennsylvania last week. There was a whole ceremony. You remember?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, no, it was spectacular.
It was a fun night. Yeah.
Thanks for coming. Anyway, let's break down this video. So first off, he's wrong immediately. His first line is wrong. He says he's at a Wegner's. There is no such thing as Wegner's. It's called Wegmans. Also, he's at neither. He's at a Redner's, which is totally different than Wegmans.
So he combined Wegmans and Redner's into one portmanteau.
Into Wegner's, which is just absolutely ludicrous. The other thing here that I really want to harp on, Oz is only looking at Pennsylvania from an Eastern PA perspective. So Western PA it's basically like Pittsburgh, and a little bit east from there is considered Western PA. Eastern PA is Philly, that sort of area where Oz polls more favorably, I guess, because you know why? It borders up against Jersey, their neighbors. And that's where Wegmans are located, right only in the Eastern PA side of Pennsylvania. We have a map. I Google Maps it specifically for this. If you're watching the show, you could see where the Wegmans are actually located. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers. Two, let's go to the crudité. Like I said, in the family that
crudité. Jordy doesn't even know what it's called.
I have no idea what this thing is called. I've never heard of it, nor have I had it, or anyone in my wife's family has made this thing for us in our 3.5 years of now living here and my 8.5, 10 years of visiting on and off. Never heard of it. If you're going to pretend to shop, you should at least pretend to shop for something that's instinctively Pennsylvania, like chipped ham. I mean, it's delicious. And I see the comments right now, folks talking about chipped ham. And I agree. It's totally underrated and we should have more of it.
I do personally appreciate a good crudité platter, but I do not think that it
What's
is.
more elitist than saying you're going shopping for crudité?
You see, John Fetterman responded. He goes, "In PA, we call this veggie tray," and then he posted the Wikipedia definition of crudités, which say how they are French appetizers, you know. And then he went on, and it's Fetterman's birthday today. He says, "OMG, Dr. Oz sent me a birthday gift because Wegner's is now one of the top trends on all of the internet."
And then just even the way Oz holds the vegetable, like he doesn't put them in bags.
He doesn't have a cart. If you're listening, he's piling on different groceries and almost like having to juggle it because he can't carry everything. It's the most ridiculous thing. But while we're on this subject of Oz and Fetterman also, there was a video. He had his first campaign outing since his health incident, and to go to Erie, the working class, the hard-nosed, the amazing people of Erie, PA, and shake their hands and show that he's okay and he's going to be their guy no matter what. It speaks volumes. And there was a video with a line around the block of folks ready to get in to see Fetterman. And it was so great to see.
Jordy, we're seeing this all over the country. Have you seen the crowds that Beto O'Rourke is getting in Texas and in like deep red pockets of Texas? Like they are just running amazing campaigns. They are actually speaking to the people. And you know what? They're all playing like they're 10 points behind, which is exactly the way you need to do it. You know, they are in it to win it. And I think a lot of these people, like the Greg Abbotts, like all these Republicans, they are taking these voters for granted, and they are frankly doing everything possible to show people that Republicans have nothing to offer other than taking away your rights. And I think people are wising up to this.
Well, people are sick of it, Brett, because if you look at what the Democrats across the country, I mean, you're talking about the Senate race in North Carolina, for example. I mean, you're talking about the Senate race in Arizona. You're talking about the Senate race in in Florida. Let's talk about the Senate race in Ohio. We just talked about the Senate race in Pennsylvania. I mean, we can go on and on and on with these Senate races. The Democrats are talking about issues. Let's reduce inflation. Let's give people health care. Let's support our troops. Let's support our allies abroad. Let's build our NATO coalition. Let's be safer home and abroad. Let's improve our education. Here's how we're going to do it. Very specific plans too.
Is that the Democratic platform or the Communist Manifesto? I couldn't tell the difference.
Well, and here's the thing: the Republicans don't have a platform, and that's not me being hyperbolic. They literally erased their platform when Donald Trump became president, and their platform literally, I'm not making this up, became "We will do what Trump tells us to do." That is actually what their platform is. So while Democrats are campaigning across the country on issues that help people, you have people like Carrie Lake out in Arizona, and she's giving speeches about her belief that Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis have large penises. I'm not making that up. She literally gave a speech where she told the audience, particularly the women, to look up the definition of BDE, which stands for Big Dick Energy. And her speech and her platform is that Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis both have big dick energy, and that is something that is important for policy for the state of Arizona. I just want to reflect on that a little bit, that is what their platform is. And you go to example, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who speaks in front of cutout cardboard boxes of Donald Trump and grabs his penis in the cardboard box and rubs it around and laughs at those things. I mean, this is disturbing. This is sick. And frankly, I always say it on this podcast, I never believed that I was actually a political person until I saw that the radical right embraced these things as political issues. And if they said these are Republican things to talk about the penis size of Donald Trump and make that a major part of your campaign, which, by the way, they both probably have very little dicks, but to make that a major part... Yeah, to make that a major, they probably have the smallest dicks ever, but to make that a major part of your political platform, I go, shit, I'm a Democrat because people are fighting for these issues that matter to me. I care about education. I care about healthcare. I care about issues about student loans. I care about the environment. I care about women's rights. I care about the rights of all people, LGBTQ plus rights. I want people to not have freedoms taken away. And if that was what makes me a Democrat, I'm the biggest Democrat in the world because all of those issues are issues that affect people.
Well
what
said.
A rant. We're into the rant of the year.
We're gonna
right
have
there.
to just clip out that rant.
Let's
I mean, it hit every area.
Let's bring in Allison Gill to break down what's taking place in the search warrant and the latest updates at Mar-a-Lago. Allison, welcome to the show. Of course, Allison Gill is the executive producer and host of two of our favorite podcasts, Mueller, She Wrote, and The Daily Beans. Gill is a veteran, a PhD, a former federal government executive. She's a comedian, author, and of course, a staunch advocate for pro-democracy, a multi-hyphenate. And she's here also to talk about a live show that we're all going to be doing together. Allison Gill, welcome to the Midas Touch podcast. Actually, welcome back to the Midas Touch podcast. Allison, how are you?
Thank you. Yeah, I gave up all that other stuff just to be a podcaster.
That's a very smart decision. I think we've followed your lead, and it's a smart decision because it's really hard to trust the media in this day and age. You know, even the mainstream media, of course, Fox fascist propaganda BS is going to continue to lie and defame every day. But even just watching the reporting of, you know, mainstream media, you know, I saw Sam Donaldson with Jim Acosta, and it just reminded me of some of the good old days of when people would just call balls and strikes and tell it how it is. But Allison, how are you seeing all of the information being reported with the search warrant executed on Mar-a-Lago last week. Is it disappointing to you just generally as a podcaster and all of those things that we said?
It is. And, you know, that's why I listen to shows like yours or read like Empty Wheel's blog, because that's where I find the actual news. Like the mainstream media isn't telling you, for example, that there's 2 receipts from this search warrant, and one of them sent stuff to DC and the other one sent stuff to the Southern District of Florida, U.S. Attorney's Office. And they both have the same case number on them. And that's because of the great sleuthing from Empty Wheel. And what that tells us, I mean, the reason that's important is because they're looking at 2 different sets of crimes here. You're looking at the Presidential Record Act and the Espionage Act crime versus obstruction. Obstruction of justice was done to the Justice Department in DC, so that has to be handled at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. That's where that crime would be charged because that's its jurisdiction. And the rest of the, you know, document handling, throwing things at the omelet bar, that's all going to be down in the Southern District of Florida in, you know, where, you know, in Palm Beach, where Mar-a-Lago is. And so that's a very interesting and important piece of information that you just they don't look at that kind of thing. When you're watching the mainstream media. The only solace that I take is when people like Joyce Vance or Barb McQuaid or Frank Figliuzzi or Andy McCabe or Pete Strzok are on these shows and they can talk for 4 minutes and like get out important bits of information. But other than that, I mean, Acosta did pretty good with Andrew Yang yesterday, though.
Yeah.
No, he definitely did. So give us the update if you can. Tell us what's the latest as of the recording of this podcast. For those listening, the podcast is recording on a Monday in case you listen to it later in the week. Can you give us the latest update of what we know in connection with the search warrant execution? You mentioned the 2 receipts. Maybe break that down for our viewers and listeners. And what else have we learned recently?
Yeah, well, kind of like what I went over on your YouTube channel this weekend. We know that Maggie Haberman, who probably knows a million things and is just letting it out piece by piece for us over the next couple of weeks, had reported that there were, you know, back in June, the Department of Justice subpoenaed the surveillance footage for Mar-a-Lago. Now, we don't know, for example, if the DOJ required there to be surveillance cameras on this room because it had top secret information on it. We know they required there to be a padlock. So it's not beyond the realm of reasonable thought that perhaps they required them to install a camera there if there wasn't one already. And then they just sit there and watch, right? But regardless, they did subpoena those surveillance tapes. They got them. And on the tapes, they found that after the DOJ had come down to visit, and when I say the DOJ, I mean the head of espionage for the Department of Justice, probably the only guy at Main Justice who has the clearance to even handle these documents, let alone look at them.
Seems bad.
Yeah, very, very bad. So he goes down there. One of their lawyers, either Corcoran or Christina Bob, or maybe a different lawyer that we haven't heard about yet, signs off on a thing saying, yes, we gave you everything. You have it all. And then they see movement of boxes out of this room. Oddly, just a few days before the Saudi golf tournament in Bedminster, and just a few days before they buried Ivana off the first tee with a casket that required 10 pallbearers to carry it. And I generally don't conspiracy theorize.
Yeah.
But if they, the DOJ knows what's missing, and if they can't find it, that's where I would look. That's just where I would go look. Bedminster.
Wasn't she cremated too?
Yes.
So
why would you need 10 pallbearers?
Why would you bury ashes? And somebody did ask a really good question though, like, why not just burn it? Why not just burn it if you're trying to get rid of it? Because that material is like cash to him. That is very valuable information.
Yeah, the tweet I saw before Ben jumps in the tweet I saw, the fact that he was flushing documents down the toilet in a house that literally has 28 fireplaces should prove that he's not fit for office.
I couldn't agree more with that. And Allison, in 2020, October 29th, you responded to a tweet by Jennifer Taub, law professor. And Jennifer wrote, "So if Trump loses, who's going to stop him from absolutely looting the U.S. Treasury or otherwise transferring government assets in the form of contracts and otherwise to him and his cronies? Not joking. Will anyone stand up and resist?" And just a reminder, October 29th, 2020, so before the November election, you wrote, "He's going to sell intelligence secrets to pay his debts."
Oh
Do you
my
think that's
gosh.
what's going on here?
Yes. Yeah. If we look at some of the ties from, the Saudis, he did the golf, he's doing the golf tournament with them. We know that they gave $2 billion to Kushner for his investment firm, and he's not an investor. And in fact, the entire investment fund of the United Arab Emirates was talking to MBS saying, "Don't do this. You can't trust him." And he still did. We already know that Jared had given some intel to the Crown Prince before, in the form of a list of traitors to the crown, which were eventually exiled and executed. So there's already been the sale of intel, and there continues to be. That's personally why I think Donald was burrowing allies in U.S. government positions before he left. If you remember the guy Michael Ellis, he was the lawyer who stashed the Zelensky phone call in that code word classified NICE system. That guy, he made the general counsel of the NSA before he left. He threw Kash Patel and Ezra Cohen-Watnick over in the Pentagon, and that was probably also to prevent the National Guard from coming and ruining his coup party. But there's just a lot of burrowed employees in these intelligence agencies and the alphabet agencies that I think we're just going to be there to farm these secrets. So we know next year, one of the reasons it was hard for him to run for president, he was going to be compromised, was because in 2023, about $800 million of his debt is going to come due, and no bank will lend to him. Deutsche Bank won't even lend to him anymore. So that makes him a compromised man. That's how I think he's going to end up getting underwritten loans from like Sberbank, sanctioned banks, through backdoor banks, like under the Qatar Investment Authority or something, all the way up into like Ladder Capital, some bank owned by a friend of his that's not in jail yet, that can write off these loans for him.
What do you make of Mary Trump and Michael Cohen this weekend saying that they thought that Jared Kushner, or would not be beyond probability that Jared Kushner could be an informant? And whether it's Kushner or whether it's someone like that, there's clearly someone on the inside, and Kushner seems like just about as good of a bet as anyone, but there definitely is at least one mole, and probably multiple, that are feeding information to the FBI. Do you think so?
Yeah, and I've had these conversations with Mary for a very long time, particularly going back to when the district attorney in Manhattan was investigating the Trump organization, which they apparently still are, but that seems like a dead investigation. But it might be revived with the new pleading of the fifth in the New York Attorney General's parallel investigation. But Mary always said that the kids would turn on him. And probably Ivanka first, and Jarvanka, I guess, because they used to be New York socialites. They used to have a life. They can't go anywhere now. Everyone hates them. Mm-hmm. And that she said with the psychopathy of this family, that they would totally throw their dad under the bus in a minute. So yeah, I imagine there is a mole, or them or multiple moles, but also it could be as simple as, you remember, we got reporting that the Department of Justice got Meadows' phone in April. Uh-huh. And then a month later, they head down to Mar-a-Lago. I mean, Meadows was one of the 7 people, along with Cipollone and Philbin, who was signed off as his guardians of presidential records as a liaison to the National Archives. So there might not even be a mole. It might just have Meadows' phone, or maybe Meadows is cooperating. He's been super quiet. We don't know. We just don't know yet.
Meadows has been incredibly quiet, especially for him. There were a few items that caught my eye on that itemized list of documents seized that was released. And some of them, people are talking about a lot right now, but some of them I feel like people aren't speaking about as much. And we obviously don't know the actual contents of these, but I was curious to get your take on what maybe they could even be. The two things that stood out to me was there was on the list 2 boxes of photos. I was wondering, what could these 2 boxes of photos be that were so important? And the other one, information on the president of France. What was your thoughts when you saw these 2?
Instantly, I thought compromat. I thought of David Pecker's safe from the Inquirer. Do you remember a couple of years ago when he had a safe load of dirt on people?
Right.
So photographs and information on the president of France. That's immediately where my mind went, because there was something when Lindsey Graham went golfing with Donald Trump and was like, "You're a kook. We're going to destroy ourselves if we elect you. I hate that guy. He's ridiculous," to just fawning all over him after they hit the links. Was there a couple of pictures in there that he showed to Lindsay and said, you probably want to be my friend? I don't know. I have no idea. But that really, because these aren't the only other thing I could think of, like, if we were going to do a scale of like innocence to guilty, what I just told you is probably the worst case scenario, right?
Right.
Taking photos of
because it's just not normal behavior. It's abnormal behavior to act the way any of these people are acting on that side. It's weird.
Right. So on a scale from Lindsey Graham and flagrante delicto down to, it could just be like some White House photos that he was going to use for his memoir. Because that's going to be one of his defenses. Well, I just took these all. It's very common for presidents to take classified material as to write their memoirs.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And now a quick word from our sponsor, Short Form, and then we'll be right back with Allison Gill. So Short Form makes the world's best guides to nonfiction books. They're like book summaries on steroids. They're super detailed, so you get the book's key points at a deep level. They have interactive exercises to help you apply the ideas you just learned so you don't forget them like I do when I read.
Those interactive exercises are so clutch, by the way.
I have the worst memory, so it's so helpful for me. They add smart insights like connecting what one author thinks about another author, and you end up understanding these ideas at this really deep level. You build these awesome connections between ideas, which I think is just fundamental to your learning experience. I spend about 20 minutes each morning reading Short Form to check out new books that I want to read. And whether you're interested in politics, health, self-improvement, Short Form really has it all. So if you're short on time, you got to use Short Form, check out the key ideas, and then you could decide if you want to invest in reading the full book. And get this, to get 5 days of unlimited access and an additional 20% discount on the annual subscription. You heard that right. An additional 20% discount. Join Short Form through our special link. That's shortform.com/Midas, or click the link in the description of our podcast notes. That's shortform.com/Midas, MEIDAS. And now back to our interview. There was a DOJ filing this morning also that a lot of people are speculating about, like, what does this mean? That there was the second search warrant signed by the magistrate Judge Reinhart on August 5th. They were saying that it's in fact not related to the search in Mar-a-Lago, and they're requesting that it continues to be sealed. The DOJ wrote that it concerns an ongoing investigation. What is your take about that?
My take is that it has absolutely nothing to do with this case, the Trump case, anything with Mar-a-Lago, anything with Donald Trump. And the reason I think that is because if it did, and they wanted to prevent it from being unsealed, they would have filed that motion under seal. We wouldn't be reading it. That's my take.
Got it. Interesting. And let's dig into Lindsey Graham. How about that? Because a lot of Lindsey Graham information, and we were just hitting on it a little bit, but Lindsey Graham, he filed this motion to quash his Fulton County grand jury subpoena to avoid testifying. Apparently his argument was that it's okay for a senator to be getting involved in trying to overthrow an election. The judge said, I don't think so. That's actually not the function of a senator. What comes next in the saga of Lindsey Graham and his Fulton County battle?
He'll probably appeal it, but I have to say, of all Republican arguments I've read in court over the last couple of years, this one actually wasn't bad.
Okay.
He was saying, look, my job was to decide whether or not to object to the certification of Joe Biden's election. So my legislative purpose in making those phone calls was to help myself determine whether or not I needed to, I had a legislative purpose. And then also maybe to help make new laws to shore up the Electoral Count Act or whatever. Actually, pretty good argument. But the judge didn't buy it. The judge was like, look, even if that was the case, which I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you were using that, some of that information. That's not the only thing we need to talk to you about. Number one. And number two, the need for your testimony far outweighs your legislative purpose on trying to decide whether to shore up the Electoral Count Act, for example. This is a very important, you can't just weasel your way out of this one. And so I was very surprised, actually. I thought he might get away with a speech or debate clause ruling because it's so broad, your legislative purpose as a congressman. So the judge said no. Now, I think that he can probably appeal this, and I think that he will.
He said he will.
Yeah, it'll go up to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and then it could go up to the Supreme Court. I imagine it'll be a little more expedited than something like the Trump tax returns for Ways and Means or the Mazars for oversight, which took 3 years. I think it'll be more expedited than that because this is a criminal grand jury. And she also threw out his argument that it wasn't a criminal investigation because the special grand jury can't hand out indictments. Remember how she had to put a special grand jury in? Yeah. And the judge was like, bro, no,
I'm not taking that bullshit. And I saw you speculate earlier, though, that you think, if he is in fact forced to testify, that they may give him some sort of soft immunity. What does that even mean? And why do you say that?
Well, I don't think he's necessarily a target in this investigation. I think they're trying to get information on what Donald did, his whole scheme. And so they might be like, look, you took part in this with him. And so we'll give you some use immunity here. We won't prosecute you for being part of the conspiracy, depending on your testimony. Because, I mean, if through the investigation they find out that he was actually part of the conspiracy and not just doing what the president told him to do, that could be different for him as far as what he could be charged with. But if he's kind of sort of an innocent bystander here, which I just want everyone to know, I don't think that's the case, but it might be much harder to prove him as part of this conspiracy because he wasn't leading it. It's never okay to call a Secretary of State and try to have them throw out black votes. That's never, ever okay. But your culpability, your willful intent comes into play when you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to 12 people to get a conviction, right? So we'll see what happens. But if he pleads the fifth, she could grant him use immunity to force his testimony, to compel his testimony so he cannot take the fifth in his own defense, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. And it just, what it is, there's so many crimes to keep track of. There's so many crimes. And that's why I love listening to the Daily Beans, because you break it down in such a clear, concise way. That's why I love following you at Mueller, She Wrote, because you know how to actually read these Department of Justice filings and you break them down in thoughtful and intelligent ways while people freak out and misunderstand things or try to report hyperbole or whatever. Like, you just are pushing the facts. And Garland, from the beginning, and all these prosecutors across the country have said that they are going to let their voices be told through the DOJ filings, not through public statements and bravado. In regards to the Department of Justice investigation, it seems like these stolen documents have now taken priority. Everybody was focused on January 6th. Now this is the attention of the nation. Do you think the Department of Justice is able to walk and chew gum at the same time here, still be pursuing all the January 6th crimes as they're focused on this investigation?
Yeah, and that's why they brought in Wyndham, right? That's why they brought that guy Wyndham in. I've been talking about him for a while. He came in January. He walked in and said, "Why aren't we talking about Trump?" And everyone was like, "Oh, well, we're doing this other, boots on the ground stuff." No. We need to start talking about Donald Trump. And then hired another 131 prosecutors. And that's who's working on the January 6th, the coup piece of this. And that's why, we can, in the media, sort of, we tend to focus on one thing at a time, but you remember just prior to this whole document thing happening at Mar-a-Lago, we were seeing tons of subpoenas in Pennsylvania for lawmakers and the fraudulent elector scheme. We had Eastman, and Clark they came knocking on Clark's door and he was in his underwear, which was awful. And we had Eastman's phone being overturned, and Eastman trying to get it back. Like, you guys, give me my phone back. And they're like, no.
It's been pretty glorious to watch, I got to say.
So that an investigation is cooking, right? I mean, it's cooking. Now, what's going to happen now? What are we, 85 days from the election or something like that? To get coming up on
something like
we're
that,
less than 90, but we aren't quite at 60. So that there's no written time frame for the DOJ to not take overt political, or not political, but overt investigatory actions close to an election. Are they going to go by the 60-day unwritten rule or the 90-day unwritten rule? I tend to think that this is a little more of a conservative, especially after what happened with Comey. I think they might just clam up for a while now and wait until after the election for anything. It might get kind of boring.
We'll see. I think they've surprised us in actually how aggressive they've been at pursuing some of the most serious charges that we didn't even think they would go after. And speaking of it all, I mean, the Garland doubters who have been coming after you, who have been, have they moved the goalposts now? Or are they starting to finally believe, you know what, like, he actually has been investigating. This actually has been going on for a long time. And it looks like justice might actually be served.
The thoughtful ones, like Lawrence Tribe, Weissman, the thinkers who were very kind of, trying to push for this to go faster or whatever, louder, whatever, have said, I was wrong. I'll eat my crow. But the ones who make money off of scaring people have not, and they are going to continue to move the goalposts. They're going to say it wasn't soon enough. They are complaining about the 2-day period between the time the warrant was signed and the time that they knocked on the door at Mar-a-Lago.
The weekend?
The weekend. They're complaining that if it were them, they would be in jail right now. It's like, yeah, you're not an ex-president. We don't have to button your case up as tight. So I imagine that they'll continue to move the goalposts. They'll continue to, because here's the thing about when you sell doom for a living, there's always going to be something that didn't go your way that you can latch onto and say and prove you that you were right. So it's whether it's he only gets 96 months in prison, or there's a mistrial on 2 of the counts, or he doesn't have to go to jail. He gets home arrest because the Secret Service has to protect him. He gets Secret Service protection, or whatever it is. They'll be like, "See, I told you, Garland was protecting Donald," and they can win no matter what. Yeah. And their message, they can make it fit their narrative. And so when people turn around and accuse me of selling hope, I'm like, that is like the hardest thing to sell. Why would I do that to myself? There's no money in hope.
Also, you're so measured in your analysis. You're like, all you do every time you tweet or speak on your podcast is you say exactly what is in the DOJ filings, and you never even speculate. Like, you never say he will definitely be arrested. He will definitely be you don't go there. You just lay out the facts, and people could take the facts how they want them, but they're the facts. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, and a lot of people have been convinced that I'm have been saying that Mueller was going to indict him and Mueller was going to get him and then Garland's going to get him. I'm like, I never said. I have said the opposite. I can show you 1,000 tweets where I've said, everybody, Mueller is not going to indict Donald. He's not going to be super spectacular. It's not going to be the pizzazz you want. He's a prosecutor. That's what he does. He's gonna write up a big fat report and say, Congress, it's your turn. You have to do something. But for some reason, these big accounts have people convinced that I've been a blind faith cheerleader when I'm just.
Oh my goodness!
I spit facts.
Spit facts. Facts only from AG. And a lot of these cases,
I will sometimes speculate, but I make it clear. Like, here's what I think. This is what I hope, at least. But
and the batting average on your speculation is like 1,000%. It's pretty incredible.
That's very true.
I
Yeah.
want to go back to our conversation with Trump. He came out with a comment. I'm going to paraphrase because he can't even repeat what the guy says normally since he doesn't speak in complete sentences. But he said something along the lines of he'll do whatever it takes to bring down the temperature of the country because everyone right now is riled up. I mean, isn't that just another instance of the pot calling the kettle black here? I mean, he riled up everyone. He lit the fire and then said, I'm going to save the day and put out the fire. What do you make of Trump's comments and sort of just his behavior ever since the raid of Mar-a-Lago?
Well, that's his mob threat, right? That's
The search of Mar-a-Lago, sorry.
That's the mobster style threat. That's the same thing he said to Garland. He had somebody call up Merrick Garland and say, that's a really nice department you've got there. Be a shame if something happened to it. He basically said there's a lot of people that there's a fire is what he keeps using that. He keeps using that metaphor. The country's on fire. I can help put out the fire. That to me is him saying, I will turn my angry mob on you at any second if you don't do things the way that I want them to be done. That's his threat. That is what that is. And that he keeps repeating it. That sounds like his terminology now. The fires, he's going to help prevent the country from burning down.
Oh my goodness. It's a scary time for sure. But AG, in the scary times, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And one of those glimpses of hope and light, we have a big announcement with this team right here coming up, right? August 22nd, Largo in Los Angeles. What's going down there?
Yes, you, me, Frangela, Steve Pearson from How We Win, the podcast How We Win. We are all going to be there with my good friend, esteemed colleague, hilarious person, Kathy Griffin.
Woo!
And we've got a special surprise guest too, who we aren't going to tell you about, but it's all at Largo, all August 22nd. And what's cool is that every single penny that you spend on your ticket to get into this event goes to the How We Win Fund, and these are the number crunchers, right? These are the data people who sit down and figure out how a penny has the most impact, where your dollar can have the most impact to keep this like improve our chances to increase our seats in the Senate and our hold on the House. So it's not like, I remember giving money to like Beto and Amy McGrath, and my friends are like, don't, she has $90 million. She cannot possibly spend your dollar. Give it to this guy over here running in this 6th district of Arizona where they need to hold that legislature in order to prevent falsely certifying electors in the next election. And that's what they've done. They've crunched these numbers to find out where your dollar can have the most impact. And that's what you're donating to. It's going to be so much fun, this live show.
Let's go.
Where can people go and buy tickets? How do they find out about it?
Yep. You just go to howwewinlive.com. And that's where you buy a ticket. And actually what you're doing is you're making a donation to the How We Win Fund. And then we take your name, we put you on a list, and you get into the show.
Well, we hope to see you there at Largo on August 22nd. Go to howwewinlive.com. Check it out right now. Allison Gill, thank you so much for joining us and breaking down all the updates on the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago and what's happening next. We so appreciate you.
Thank you. And thanks for what you guys do. Seriously, these videos and your podcast, the whole network is just absolutely amazing, incredible at informing people. And that is what I love about independent journalism.
Thank you so much. We feel the same way about everything you're doing at MSW. Thank you, Allison Gill, for joining us on the Midas Touch podcast. Everybody check out the live show. And while you're at it, everybody check out
show. Let's go.
Check out store.midastouch.com. Jordy's wearing right now, for our listeners, It Wasn't Rigged, You're Just a Loser t-shirt, which is a bestseller. We also got the new shirt. Jordy, tell us about the new shirt that we got up there.
Oh, the new shirt, the new. The person, woman, man, camera, prison shirt is a new fan favorite. And you can check that out exclusively at store.midastouch.com.
Yeah, but seriously, check that out now, because I don't even think we realize the demand for those shirts.
Oh, I grossly underordered the inventory.
Yeah, we're about to totally sell out. So check out store.midastouch.com now. And do me a favor, all of the podcast listeners, go subscribe to the Midas Touch YouTube channel. YouTube viewers, go and subscribe to the audio of the Midas Touch podcast, wherever the podcast is available by audio. And both of you, just play the podcast a little bit on both. You need that double dose.
Work the algos.
You got to not work the algos. You got to do so silly. You got to the same way short form makes the world's best guides and helps you synthesize that information. Just kind of listening to the audio and watching it, I think does a good job reinforcing the great messages like what lunatics these radical right-wing extremists are. And I guess to leave you with one of the most radical right extremist moments of the week that I think just sums up this party, Russian Ron Johnson, who's up for election in Wisconsin, one of the other races too, where I think the Democrats are just fighting a very even-keeled, level-headed, normal fight against just the ridiculousness. When Ron Johnson was asked if he was worried about documents leaking from Mar-a-Lago, this was his response.
Are you concerned at all about national security breaches with those classified documents being at the Mar-a-Lago estate?
First of all, I think Mar-a-Lago is a pretty safe place. We have Secret Service protection. Sounds like these documents might have been in a safe, so no, I'm not overly concerned about some top secret information getting leaked out.
Yeah, why would you be worried about documents leaking from Mar-a-Lago where there's already been proven to be like multiple spies that just show up? Donald Trump like gives tours.
It's only your job, buddy. It's only your listen. If you're not equipped to handle the jobs of a U.S. senator, then just stop. Then don't run. Okay, just hand it over to somebody else who's actually going to take their job seriously. You know, I think I've got a new phrase for us that we could workshop a little bit. But I was thinking about this over the weekend. What the differences really are. Of course, there's a whole lot of them. But if you really break it out, it's rationalism on our side versus radicalism on that side. And that's the dichotomy that we are seeing right now in this country. It's rational people who are actually trying to help people. Hey, they might not get 100% of what you want, but they are trying to push the country in a better direction. And then you have the radicalism of the people who want violence, who want to spread unhinged conspiracy theories, who are frankly just living on another planet entirely where facts do not exist. And those are the choices and those are the stakes of this election. And now we have less than 90 days. Heck, we may have 85 or so days until election day. Things are ramping up in a big way. And so we need all of you to be involved. We need all of you to keep sharing this show, to keep spreading the word, to get the information out, because these elections will dictate the direction of our country. And we need you in this fight.
Brett, before we go back to Jordy, okay, I know I said that was going to be the last moment of
what else you got for us, Ben?
What you got?
Okay, let's play Bo Hines, the video where Bo Hines, he's a radical right-wing extremist running for Congress in North Carolina.
We have to play this.
And he literally thinks that a banana republic refers to the store Banana Republic. Now, Jordy, this is something you would say when you were like No, but I was going to say this is something that Jordy would say when he was like 9 or 10 years old. And we would make fun of Jordy for
and we would still talk about it
relentlessly to this day. They'd still bring it up at every Thanksgiving.
Play this one by Bo Hines.
You get to Congress. Is it going to be real? Are we actually going to be willing to defund IRS, FBI, and things of that nature?
Well, I mean, we have to. I mean, we're at a point in our country now where we have a unregulated fourth branch of government that's targeting middle-class Americans on a daily basis. I mean, it's unbelievable what we're seeing. You know, a lot of people have likened the situation that's going on right now as, you know, they say we're in a banana republic. I think that's an insult to banana republics across the country. I mean, at least the manager at Banana Republic, unlike our president, knows where he is and why he's there and what he's doing.
We have to.
Banana republics across the country. At least banana republics have managers who know where they are. Are you fucking? Yeah, and the face of the guy speaking to, like, you just see him go from like smiling of like, oh yeah, he's giving us the red meat of what we want, to just being dumbfounded. His smile becomes a frown in real time. This is one of the funniest clips I've ever seen.
Bo Hines. He wasn't even trying to.
I mean, he thinks Banana Republic all this time when all of his colleagues are saying they're turning us into a Banana Republic. He thinks they're turning us into a store.
The subtle part of what I thought was funny about the clip too, and it's going to be my own humor, when you're like, so people like that, just the framing of the question. A lot of people think it will be difficult to defund the FBI and the IRS. What do you say to that? Like the very framing of the question is absurd. And then he goes, we have to like we have to. What are you talking about? We're going to defund the federal law enforcement agency that protects us from terrorism. That's their position. I mean, let's come on, people. Let's go and let's be, as Brett says, rational and not a radical. Let's take America back, please, for the rational America, please. And you know what? Let those 20%, 30%, let's push them back in their basements again, please. Just keep them in the basements. You know, maybe put that padlock on the basement that Trump was supposed to put in Mar-a-Lago. But that will be that's my New Year's resolution. Jordy, take us away.
I'm going to go make some crudité. Shout out to the Midas Mighty!